or no religion.
Yeah, of course. No, we agree about that. And I, too, do not want to bludgeon people into believing what I believe. I want to persuade them. I want to show them, as you do, how wonderful the scientific worldview is. I'm just sad if they don't get it.
Welcome to episode 3 of Raised Catholic Philosophy. I'm your host, Al Cannistraro, and today I'll be talking about what I call my past allergy to acknowledging references to God, deity, or to an afterlife in the interest of political correctness in certain circles. Now, it's not really an allergy, but I call it an allergy because it's a reaction, it's a reluctance to use the wrong language, to push the wrong emotional and intellectual buttons among people I'm with at the time who have perhaps a very, very stringent scientific worldview. As you know, one of the purposes of this project of mine, Raised Catholic Philosophy, is to come to grips with the fact that I do in fact have a worldview, or I'm open to having a worldview that was very strongly influenced by the Catholic worldview that was imprinted upon me as a child. And as a result, I'm really more at home with this expanded, broader worldview where the scientific view is within a metaphysical context, if you will, a metaphysical context that's wider than the world that's currently available to us through our senses directly and through the scientific instruments that we have at our disposal at this time. So let me tell you a story. I happen to be an acquaintance of a fairly well-known Harvard professor, an author, a public figure, who lives in a world where it's not really cool to acknowledge any kind of validity to a transcendent viewpoint, a transcendent worldview. I happened to be invited to his home for a party because I was one of his top volunteers for a project that he was working on several years ago. And I said, you know, I think of you as a secular saint. And I knew I was taking a chance when I said that. I was pushing his buttons. He said, What do you mean saint? Now, here I am at the home of a Harvard tenured, endowed chair, big name, big shot, Harvard professor with other Harvard professors in the room at the party, and I'm calling him a saint. I explained. I said, well, in the view of the Catholic Church, which names saints, they name saints because they think that these individuals led exemplary lives that ought to be emulated. And I think you have lived an exemplary life that ought to be emulated. In a secular way, you're a saint. And he said, oh, okay, I'll take that. I'll accept that. But he wasn't thrilled that I used that terminology. So switching gears, lately there's been a lot of talk in the media about ChatGPT, ChatGPT. It's a website you can go to where you can interact with a linguistic robot, call it a robot, and you can have a conversation with it, an intelligent, knowledgeable conversation with it, where you can ask it questions, tell it what you think, tell it what you know. It'll respond to you with information that's drawn from the wider internet. You must have heard of ChatGPT. So I put this question naively to the chatbot yesterday. Listen to this. I asked it, why are so many people in the United States uncomfortable acknowledging references to religious or transcendent concepts regarding a presumed or possible deity or afterlife? I asked it that question, and right away it shot back an answer. It gave me 3 chief reasons why. He said, here we go. There could be, the answer was, there could be a few reasons why so many people in the United States are uncomfortable acknowledging references to religious or transcendent concepts. And it named three: secularism, diversity, and personal beliefs. And I'll read what these terms mean. Secularism. The United States is a secular country, which means that the government is separate from religion. As a result, many people in the U.S. believe that religion and spirituality should be kept private and not discussed in public forums. Pretty cogent answer. Diversity. The United States is a country with a diverse population, and many people have different religious beliefs. Acknowledging references to religious concepts may alienate those who do not share the same beliefs. So many people prefer to avoid those topics to maintain a sense of unity and respect for others' beliefs. Also pretty cogent. Third one was personal beliefs. Some individuals may be uncomfortable acknowledging references to religious concepts because they do not believe in a deity or afterlife, or because they have a different understanding of these concepts than what is being referenced. Sounds good. I wasn't satisfied. So I took advantage of a box that was offered to me where I could ask it, tell me more. So it shot back with 4 additional reasons, and they were political correctness, scientific skepticism, fear of judgment, and lack of understanding. And I'll tell you how the bot defined those terms. Political correctness. In recent years, political correctness has become increasingly important in the United States, and many people are wary of offending others with their beliefs or opinions. Acknowledging references to religious or transcendent concepts could be seen as imposing one's beliefs on others, which many people want to avoid. Now they're getting warmer. I mean, that resonated with me. Yeah, I think that was talking about me. The next one, scientific skepticism, bingo, it was really talking about me in the past. Scientific skepticism. Many people in the U.S. are skeptical of religious or transcendent concepts because they believe that science has all the answers. For these individuals, acknowledging references to these concepts may be seen as going against scientific principles. It's like being untrue to your tribe. It's like being untrue to the scientific viewpoint if you acknowledge or give any kind of respect at all to different worldviews. That was me, for sure. Third one, also me, fear of judgment. I didn't want to be judged. Some people may be uncomfortable acknowledging references to religious or transcendent concepts because they fear being judged by others. For example, they may worry that others will think they are not intelligent or open-minded because of their beliefs. Guilty. And fourth, lack of understanding. Lack of understanding. Finally, some individuals may be uncomfortable acknowledging references to religious or transcendent concepts simply because they do not understand what is being discussed. For these people, the discomfort may stem from a lack of knowledge or familiarity with the concepts rather than any particular belief or opinion. Now, I'll qualify that. I'll say because of stereotyping. I'll say not because of lack of understanding. I'll say because of misunderstanding. By holding nonsensical, stereotypical views that don't apply, by not giving religious believers or believers in transcendence the credit of having a brain and having well-reasoned opinions that are plausible or at least are defensible. By way of illustration, I opened this segment with a little clip from a YouTube podcast I think this was Neil deGrasse Tyson's podcast, where his guest was Richard Dawkins. And they were sympathizing with each other that people who don't hold a strictly scientific worldview just don't get it. Now, who they have in mind to a large extent are very, very conservative, very narrow-minded, fundamentalist Christians who basically are the voice, the image of religion in this country at this time. They get all the publicity. That segment, that narrow-minded segment of religious believers, they look at Scripture as not just, let's say, inspired moral or philosophical writings, but they look upon it as a science book, as a history book, as sources of hard information. Well, these people are mockable. I think they should be respected, but in many ways, they're mockable. But they're a straw man. They are easy targets. And people like Dawkins and Neil deGrasse Tyson, they should know better. They are picking on people who are too easy to pick on. Now, I grew up in a Catholic environment that was not like these fundamentalists. It was harmonious with science. Many pioneers in science, as people know, were actually members of the clergy, of the Catholic clergy. So I don't know how people like Dawkins and Neil deGrasse Tyson can get away with constantly beating on these straw men of fundamentalist Christian believers who aren't that well educated and don't care to be. But many people who don't hold a purely scientific point of view, and by that I mean don't hold the view of scientism, don't hold the view that the only thing that's true, the only thing that's worth believing as true is something that is demonstrable using the scientific method at this time. That's the only truth. And if things are not demonstrably true scientifically, then they're not true, or they're not worth respecting. That's a narrow view. And I think when Dawkins and Neil deGrasse Tyson say that the fundamentalists don't get it, or they're missing something, well, I think they are also missing something. Now, my view, I grew up with this Catholic viewpoint. I mean, there was a creator God who was responsible for creating the material world that we know and everything else. And then there was some type of a test for mankind, which mankind failed. And then there's this economy, this eternal economy of reward and punishment. Okay, that's the business plan that they used to build this organization, the church, and it worked pretty well for a long time. But people like myself who have this expansive, metaphysically based worldview just see a wider context for science. That science basically operates on metaphysical assumptions. Metaphysical assumptions that you can't prove or disprove. You just accept them. And it's just narrow-minded on the part of people like I'll just say Dawkins, because Neil deGrasse Tyson is too hard to keep on saying. That people like Dawkins keep harping on. I mean, Dawkins doesn't appreciate the basic fact that allows me to have a wider perspective than just scientific, which is this: the scientific model. The materialist reductionist model is inadequate to explain consciousness. Now, there is an assumption on the part of scientists. It's not a far out assumption, but eventually they think science will figure it out. People like myself are doubtful, so doubtful that they think it's okay to just reject the model, and try to start from scratch with something else. And that's where I get permission to be open to ideas like metaphysical idealism, which hold that that consciousness is primary. This is one way of getting around the hard problem of consciousness. You just assume that consciousness exists, and then you figure a way to create the rest of reality out of consciousness. And the philosopher who I'm very, very fond of, Bernardo Kastrup, and others, do have such a model. And I like it. It's fun. It's fun. It's mind expansive. I find it very, very interesting. But unfortunately, it puts me in a category with, in the minds of people like Dawkins, it puts me in the same category as Christian fundamentalists. And that's where the problem is. Okay. I do not hold to scientism. I think it's a broader context. And I think that idealism, metaphysical idealism, is plausible. It's worth pursuing. It is being pursued. And it's only going to be making more and more progress. It is possible that eventually people will laugh and scoff at the materialist reductionist model because it just wasn't adequate, and people just held on to their high hopes for too long. Now, don't get me wrong, please. I'm not saying that the scientific model is inaccurate. I'm saying it's the opposite. It's 100% accurate. We know it's accurate because it validates itself. It's a self-correcting system. If it makes predictions that are accurate, you stay with the model. If you find out that it's making inaccurate predictions, you change your thesis. It's self-correcting. So it's a great system. It's just about perfect, except it strays into metaphysics, and people get a little bit too confident in their assumptions, and they start making assumptions as if they're scientific when actually they are metaphysical. So that's my main objection, and I do think that a time may come when there is another model. Maybe metaphysical idealism isn't it, but I think people, more and more people, are opening their minds to the possibility of other models, and I'm one of those people. Now, along those lines, there is a website I stumbled upon recently. My thing is worldviews. I'm investigating worldviews because I have a slightly different worldview. That's the context I'm starting to use now. That's a term I'm starting to use. And is a professor, Stephen P. Cook, of the Arkansas Technological University, who teaches physical sciences, I believe. He's been working on an assessment tool. He has an assessment tool for worldviews that's online and has been online, I think, for a couple of decades. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting. He has 104 parameters that are paired, where you express a preference for one versus the other. And depending on what your preference pattern is, he characterizes your worldview in several different ways. He has the stereotypical worldviews. One of them is pro-science, by the way, which is why I'm talking about it. He has a pro-science worldview profile for people who take the test. So I took the test, and now I'm not surprised when I don't have very, very high scores in one category. That's kind of the way I am. I don't usually fit the stereotypes. But I only got 38% correlation with the pro-science profile. I took offense. I took offense at that, and I wrote him an email. I want to talk to him about that, and maybe have him on this podcast to discuss it further. But I think the problem was that he had some questions that were kind of religiously oriented, but not metaphysically oriented. So I got caught up I don't have this view of scientism. He assumes that people who are pro-science have a scientistic, maybe that's not the right word, but a perspective of scientism, which I don't have. And he thinks that people who don't have that are religious, which is not me. I don't have a religious perspective. I have a metaphysical one that has a broader context than just science. So I got lumped in, and I'm a Yahoo. He has me as only 38% pro-science. He's got to fix that. I hope he fixes that. So I thought I'd share that. I'm going to put the link to his website in the description, along with other relevant links. But just to say it, the name of his project is Project Worldview. Project Worldview. Now, to close this podcast, I want to mention former President Jimmy Carter, the 39th president, who I learned about 3 days ago. I'm recording this podcast on February 19th and 20th. And I think on the 18th, late in the day, I heard that Jimmy Carter was at home in hospice care. The family asked for privacy. The impression is that his life is coming to an end. And of course, he's 98 years old, so it's just a matter of time in any case. But his life is coming to an end, and I am so fond of Jimmy Carter. And the reason I'm mentioning it is because, the man was openly religious, a Baptist, openly religious, not ashamed of it. He was morally an exemplary person. If only, all or more religious believers could be as exemplary in their personal conduct and their values as he is. And he's also a scientist. He was a nuclear engineer, I believe. He's also very much a scientist. And he was technologically advanced. He put solar panels. It was a very forward thing to do. Put solar panels on the White House, for which he was mocked. So I was thinking, I had ChatGPT on my mind. I said, I wonder if I asked ChatGPT what a clergyman might say at a funeral for Jimmy Carter, one that acknowledged the role of faith in his life. And I wonder, if people with Richard Dawkins, for example, on hearing, or Tyson, Neil deGrasse Tyson, on hearing such a eulogy, would they get pangs of transcendental allergy? That's what I'm calling this episode, transcendental allergies. Would they get a reaction, a transcendental allergic reaction to hearing that religious language? So I'm going to read what ChatGPT suggested might be a eulogy for Jimmy Carter, and see what buttons they push in you, if they push any at all, and see how sensitive people ought to be to this kind of language. It's just it's less than one full side double space of a sheet of paper. Dear friends and loved ones, we're gathered here today to pay our respects to a remarkable man who lived a life of service, humility, and faith. President Jimmy Carter was a true servant of God who dedicated his life to serving others and making the world a better place. As many of you know, President Carter's faith was an integral part of his life. He was a devout Christian who lived his life according to the teachings of the Bible. He believed in the power of prayer, the importance of forgiveness, and the value of love and compassion. One of the ways that President Carter expressed his faith was through his teaching of Sunday school. For decades, he taught classes at Maranatha Baptist Church in his hometown of Plains, Georgia, sharing his deep understanding of the scripture with his fellow worshipers. He believed that the teachings of Jesus could help guide us toward a more just and compassionate world, and he lived those teachings every day. But President Carter's faith wasn't just something he practiced on Sundays. It was a guiding force throughout his life, inspiring him to pursue justice, peace, and equality for all people. He fought for the rights of the marginalized and the oppressed, and he spoke out against injustice and inequality wherever he saw it. We mourn the passing of President Carter today, or as we mourn the passing of President Carter today, let us remember his unwavering commitment to his faith and his dedication to serving others. Let us honor his legacy by continuing his work, by living our lives according to the principles of love, compassion, and justice that he so passionately believed in. Rest in peace, President Carter. You will always be remembered as a true servant of God, a tireless advocate for justice and equality, and a beloved friend to so many. So, what's not to like about that, in my opinion? Thanks a lot. I'm going to be setting up a Discord server, they call it, Discord server. It already is set up, but I'm going to put a place on the Discord server for discussing this particular episode 3. I'm trying to get a little bit of a community going here. I encourage you to help me build my audience, to comment on the YouTube, comment, like, subscribe, spread the word. And also to build community, I'm asking people to look for the Discord invite in the description. And if you want to have long form discussions or reactions to anything I said, that's the place to do it. If you become conspicuous in a good, positive way, perhaps you can be my guest on a future episode, and we can talk about these things. So thanks so much for sticking it out. I hope you come back. I hope you bring others with you. See you next time.